in the radio live. Sits hum deep like a heartbeat pulse. Retro dreams where we are lost. Oh. Neon waves take us back in.
Welcome, everybody. It's your boy, the Versace Donner. We're here with a very, very special guest. We got daughter of WWE Hall of Famer, a real American hero, Sergeant Slaughter. We got the one and only with us tonight, Kelly Remus. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome.
Hi. Hello. How
I
are
love
you?
it. You know, I love it. You know, it's funny. I've been a wrestling fan all my life. Probably, to not age myself, but probably since I saw King Kong Bundy in a cage on TV. But the first
Nice.
show I actually went to was a show in Worcester, Mass, and I was very lucky. It was a house show, and I happened to see your dad with his General Arden and Colonel Mustafa against Hulk Hogan, and they were fighting at a house show, and I was like, this is awesome. Granted, being a kid, I was a weird fan. I rooted for the bad guys. So I actually was a fan more of your dad as a heel than I was probably later on when he turned good or before when he was good. So like for me, I was like, this is great. But that's actually the first show I went to was that. It's kind of funny.
Nice. When he was the Iraqi sympathizer.
Yeah, and I didn't, being a kid, I knew he was something bad. He was a bad guy. People weren't liking him, but I didn't realize like the whole, actual ramifications of everything until later on when I realized, well, wow, there was actually a war going on and all this going on. So I was in grade school. I wasn't really, I was watching wrestling like it was, something entertaining. I didn't know they were pulling real life into it until later on. And then seeing the
Right.
stories, I was like, my God, the poor guy, he was harassed. People sending letters and threats, and people not knowing what's real and fake at that time. It's before the internet.
Yeah,
Uh,
that wasn't a very fun time in our family at all.
Now you must have been a little girl, I take it, at the time, but um, you know, again, not people not really knowing what's real and fake. Like, what's going on here?
Right. And my dad was also so good at what he did. You know what I mean? Like he made it so believable and so real. And so it's kind of really a testament to him and how good of a job he was, or how good he was at his job.
Yeah, I mean,
I
going
actually saw,
from that American hero, going from that, icon, and really making everybody believe that he was an Iraqi sympathizer, you know, not just, by everything, by the way he looked, the people they brought in to, be his guards, everything that, was going on, it was very believable, and I think, they always thought about him, he drew the line at the flag burning, which, I don't blame him. But even like, they said, doing that Hogan thing, and to everybody, Hogan being this American hero at the time, it was really symbolic. It was like, oh my God, he just did the unthinkable.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
traitor. I actually watched some YouTube videos with my dad of him doing some promos during that time period. And this was only not that it wasn't that long ago. And maybe 10 years ago, we're looking and I start getting my heart starts to race and I start getting mad as I'm watching them. And finally, I turned to my dad and I was like, Dad, no wonder people wanted to kill you and to kill us because I want to kill that guy right now. And I'm your daughter. And I know that that's all fake. And that was like a bajillion years ago. But geez,
yeah, I mean, some of it was laid on very thick. And honestly, I
yeah,
mean, it's a standout moment. I mean, it headlined a WrestleMania. Him becoming a champion even drew even more hate when he beat Ultimate Warrior. And I think, taking that title and running with it and having it in his hands, it made people just, eat it up even more. And he
mhm,
was really good at what he did. Because even when he was the good guy, everybody knew he was the good guy and they were all standing by him, after and so forth on and prior. And like I said, during that time period, but it just happened to be the time that I started attending shows. And I remember, that SummerSlam later on in the year. I think it was like Match Made in Hell, and they had that, and then the Macho Man wedding after, and it was just like Hogan and Warrior, I think, against all three, and it was just a wild time period, because again, it brings you back to that childhood. But
Mhm.
one of my favorite probably champions in WWE, because again, I voted for the bad guys, and the bad guy champions. Hogan and all these guys were champions, but they were all good guys when they did it.
Yeah. Hmm.
Now, were you a fan of wrestling growing up? In the household, were you someone that like would attend the shows and check them out, or were you just kind of doing your own thing?
So when I was really little, when he was really, so when I was around between 4 and 6 years old, that's when he was going into, we moved to Connecticut. He was working for WWE, and then started working for Hasbro. And so I was pretty young, and he didn't smarten my sister and I up to the business. So we thought everything was real, and it is real, but you know, we weren't smart to the business. And so the first match that we went to, or it might have been the second match we went to, was the one that I talk about in the biography, where it was my dad and the Iron Sheik, and it was like a family show. We were in the Poconos, everyone's families were there, and he had a weapon, and he came out into the ring, and he was moving the weapon from his belt to his boots. And then the ref would come over because the crowd's going, "It's in his boots, it's in his boots." And then he'd come over and check his belt and be like, "There's nothing there, there's nothing there." And then Sheik would take it from his boot and put it in his belt. And everyone's going, "It's in the belt, it's in the belt." And then he's checking the boot. You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah,
not in there. And so my sister and I are like, "It's in the boot. It's in the belt. Like, he's going to kill our dad." And so then he came out and they wrestled, and he ends up taking the knife out or whatever it was he had, and he hit my dad with it. And then my dad starts bleeding, and my sister and I just put our heads down, and
yeah,
my mom covered us with her body, came over us with her body, and was like telling us it was okay and daddy was okay and all of that. So it was a traumatizing experience. And my sister, when the match was over, my sister went backstage, my mom took her backstage, and I went to the ring, and my dad was, waving and, doing that whole thing. And I pulled on him, and he looked and saw it was me and was like, "Oh." And then we walked backstage together through the curtain and to meet my mom, who's got my sister. And she was like, "I cannot believe you just did that. What is wrong with you?" And
yeah.
he was like, "I didn't know he was going to do it. I had no
I
idea
didn't
he was
know
going
this.
to do
Oh yeah, I didn't know that what was gonna happen.
it." Right.
Uh,
So after that, we didn't want to go to the matches. And even after he smartened us up to the business, which was around the time of the Iraqi sympathizer, is when I was smartened up to the business. My sister may have been smartened up before that, but the Iraqi sympathizer days is when he smartened us up to the business. And so that we knew our dad wasn't really intrigued.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I was gonna say. I mean, that must have
Yeah.
been tough.
So, and so it was, yeah, I liked watching it. Like, I liked when my dad won, you know what I mean? Like, I liked that, but I didn't like to see my dad lose. Who does? Who wants to see their dad lose?
No,
So,
no.
but there was the first match we ever went to, I was like all decked out in slaughter gear, and I had a whistle, and I was like standing on the chair ringside, and like, blowing my whistle and cheering on my dad, and all of that. And so then, because he was winning and there was no weapon, and I didn't have to see my dad bleeding. and then and then for my next match to be that match with Sheik, it was like, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to see that happening to my dad.
Yeah,
So
even
when
when
we
like it looks real.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't know. And he would tell us, like, Daddy's not really getting hurt. These are Daddy's friends. These are people Daddy works with. And, we are dancing. It's a dance. Like, he would always say it was a dance. I'm just dancing. We're just dancing. But we knew that that wasn't true because he would come home on the rare occasion that he was home. He was hurt. He could barely walk. You know what I mean? So it's like, but you
It's
are
like,
getting
yeah,
hurt,
okay, he's
Dad.
not as beat up as we might have seen, but he's feeling something. So something is here.
Right, right. He'd be wrestling, he would wrestle with broken bones. He was
Well, I
wrestling
mean,
with
I
a
think that,
bad knee.
well, yeah, I mean, wrestling, regardless of what people want to call it, fixed, rigged, whatever, it's not, there's blood to the death sport. It's still very taxing on the body. It's still, is as aggressive as any other sport that's out there, maybe even more because you are getting thrown around, you are landing on your head, you are doing all these things. It's just in a controlled environment and it's in a controlled, way of doing it. But your body doesn't know the difference. You still feel pain.
Right. And there's no off season in wrestling.
Not
It's
at that
continuous.
level. I mean, we're talking your dad was working the highest level he was. He went, in the early days
Right.
AWA, but after that it was WWE and it was right to the top.
Mm-hmm.
There is no days off at that level.
No, and there's no, most sports have a season, so they have like all these months off to recover. Wrestling still doesn't have that. They don't get that. They don't get that time to recover.
No, you get hurt, but then you're not used, you're not here, you lose whatever you had, whatever you worked towards, you're done. So you do
Exactly.
work through those
Hurt, you're
injuries
not
that
working, you don't get a payday.
no, so I think in wrestling, I think more so than others, people tend to work through their injuries, which ends up causing more longer term damage.
Yes, absolutely.
Um, but learning all that, did it ever get you curious into wanting to be in the business or be part of the business?
Oh, absolutely. I wanted to be a wrestler. When I found out my dad was a wrestler, because it wasn't common knowledge to me. So when I found out that my dad was a wrestler and that he was famous, um, I and then was allowed to watch him wrestle, I wanted to be a wrestler. And what I saw with women in wrestling at the time wasn't what I wanted to do because I didn't feel like women in wrestling at that time were taken seriously. I thought it was campy. There was some amazing female wrestlers, and it was not taken seriously. And it's a lot different now, but I knew then that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be taken seriously. If I'm going to be a wrestler and I'm Sergeant Slaughter's daughter, you're going to take me freaking seriously. So then it was, well, I'm going to be a wrestler, but I'm going to wrestle the men because the men are taken seriously. So I'm going to wrestle the men. My dad was like, no, you are not. My dad didn't want me to be in the business. My mom didn't even want my dad to be in the business. So she was not encouraging me in any way, shape, or form. So it kind of was off the table eventually. And I moved on to other things. And then in my later years, in my adulthood, I thought that why didn't I ever become a wrestler? Because now that I'm so into fitness and seeing what my body can do and how powerful I actually am and how strong I really am, um, it's like I'm 20 years too late.
Not
you
really.
know?
I mean, now that people are wrestling later than ever, and I mean, not for nothing. Even if you weren't in WWE, there's a very nice intergender scene out there. You can beat up all the men you want.
Right?
I go to total shows that have nothing but intergender matches, and now it's like something totally different. Where years ago it would be something you wouldn't fathom. And I think you are right. Women's wrestling has come a long way. It went from something campy to something more sexualized to then something. Okay, this is what they are. They're athletes. They're on par with the men. Take it serious. They're world champions too. Da 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 da. But
Right.
it was years later. There was a lot of good talent in those years that just weren't taken seriously, unfortunately, and it's sad to say. They were just,
Right.
you know, used as
Yeah.
objects in the industry. And I'm
Yep.
sure as a
Arm
dad,
candy or
knowing what the industry can be and everything, he probably wanted to shield you from any bullshit happening.
yeah.
Um,
I've said that also, especially in recent years with things that have the allegations that have come out recently. And so it was like, well, you don't know what you don't know. And dad knew the business and he didn't want me in it. And there was a reason why he didn't want me in it. But then when I say that to people, they say, yeah, but you're not just anyone. If you were getting into the business, you're Sergeant Slaughter's daughter. Do you really think that they would have treated you that way? Because you are a little bit different than somebody else trying to come up in the business just because of, I'm a Nepo
depends
baby, right?
depends, I think,
So,
how in time, but yeah, but in his mind at that point, he might have seen other people that were in, daughters that were also being held
right.
back for the
He was
same reason.
he was back there. He was back there. He knew what was going on. Whether the allegations are true or not, I don't know, but he knew what happened in the business and he didn't want me to be in the business for a reason. So he's now that I'm older, he has said to me, like, if you wanted to get in the business, I could see you being a manager, but not wrestling. And so um I think I think I'm not going to say no, like I'll never ever wrestle, but I'm not going to say never, but I don't really think I
It'd be
do think I'm
something
a
like a
listen.
celebrity match at this point, or something to promote something, or
Yeah,
Slaughter,
like I'm
Slaughter's
not
here.
yeah, I'll somebody can teach me a match and I'll go do that and have a lot of fun doing it and that'll be my little whatever, my match. That'll be me wrestling, something like that. I don't know, but to do it all the time at my age, I'm 46 years old. Yeah, there are wrestlers that are my
Well,
age, but
younger than
they've been
John
doing it for
Cena,
a
he's
long
been a
time.
while. He's champion. It can be done,
Yeah,
but
but
yeah, I get what you're
how
saying.
long has he been doing it though? Like
But
he's
that's the
already
thing. You're right.
trained.
No, you're right.
I would
And
have to go through training and listen, I was running through my house and I stubbed my toe and broke it. So I can't even run without breaking something.
yeah, I know.
Trying
40s
to
are no fun.
wrestle,
Binge
like
drinking in 40s, it's no fun. Getting up can be a struggle some mornings. I couldn't even imagine I mean, we try to stay off the ground and then they want me to fall on the ground. It's like, no, my body's doing everything possible. So I went to a day seminar once and I'm like, my body's just anti-falling. It's not bumping for nothing. They're trying to get me down. They're like, look, my body does everything in its power to stay from falling down. It's not going to go
like
down
against
unless
our human nature, right? To just
it
throw
is.
yourself
You're
on
going
the
to get
ground,
paid.
you know?
You gotta like just shut your brain off and just like, oh, make yourself slip. It's very weird
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah.
But kudos to the people that do it, like I said. But not only wrestling. I mean, your dad was also a GI Joe. Like you said, he worked for Martel. They had cartoons of him on TV, action figures, and not just a wrestler, but they had a GI Joe figure, which I couldn't find the WWF figure at the time, so I used the GI Joe figure to wrestle with my wrestlers.
Hey,
It
there
made
you go.
sense to me. But that must have been kind of cool too, just having your dad be at that celeb kind of level.
Well, yeah, it was definitely cool, but I don't think that my sister and I thought it was as cool as like people think we would have. Like, yeah, of course, like, oh wow, dad, that's cool. You have a doll. Like it wasn't big enough to play with my Barbies. Like it wasn't to scale with my Barbie. So I wasn't like playing with it. It just like sat on my
Didn't
shelf
they make an
and
LGN? Didn't they make a big rubber one? No.
they made he had the original one in his office when we lived in Connecticut, the original LGN, the
Yeah.
prototype. Um but he had other things like that, but they're my dad. You know what I mean? Like if you had a action figure of your dad, would you be playing with it? You know what I mean? Like if you really think about it, like if
I
I
wouldn't,
had my
like,
Barbies got married and would kiss and have babies and stuff like that, I'm not doing that with my dad and
no,
Barbie.
see,
You
like
know what
I
I mean?
wouldn't probably, but I could see my kid like having me fight as zombies and do all this bullshit with his toys and or having me killed off multiple times. I could see that happen. And I think today's kids, they see YouTube stars, they see these people, they see people with merch, and it's a totally different game. They get all giggity over it and they're like, yes, oh my God, they got this cool merch. They got t-shirts with their faces on and all this stuff. That's really cool to them. Where, 80s, 90s, like you said, well, if it didn't vibe with what you had or there was something else cooler, it's what it is.
Right. It's a different
Um,
time,
it was. Things were simpler.
and yeah, it was a much simpler time. But yeah, I wasn't really, I mean, I thought it was cool. Like it was like, oh yeah, cool, Dad, bye. Like it wasn't like, wow, Dad, that's the coolest thing ever. Now I'm like that. Now I'm
Yeah,
like, oh
yeah.
my
Later
God,
in
because
life.
now I get it. I get it now. But as a kid, it was just like, yeah, whatever. I'm gonna go play outside. you know?
Now you look and like you see people like cosplaying your dad at conventions and stuff, and people doing all this stuff. It's like, whoa, that's my
Yeah.
dad. But
Yeah.
you
But
said
when
you
I
do
was young,
when you were
when
young.
he
That's
was in his prime, no.
well, no, but fans were different then too. I feel like fans of then were more. There was more room in between fans and wrestlers. And nowadays, even with social media, you have your dad interacts with fans via X. Your dad went to fan with fans. There's more conventions now than ever. There's more meet and greets now than ever. There's ways
Hmm.
to meet your favorite wrestler nowadays easier than ever before for regular
Yeah.
fans, super fans, whatever, which that was not available then. You saw them at a show. You were lucky to see them walk after. If you paid extra during a Mania weekend or something, you'd meet them. Other than that, it was like nothing really, nothing.
Yeah,
It
you're
wasn't
right.
the way of
Access
it.
to celebrity is definitely a lot different than it was when we were coming up, for sure.
Because your dad still does conventions today. I see him still doing signings.
Oh yeah, he's going to Canada. I think he's going to Quebec this weekend to do a show.
That's
He's
awesome.
all over the place. He's got figures coming out. He's has just had figures come out. There's like a rubber man, a rubber thing. Two of those I think just came out. So he's got
About
somebody
2 years
somebody
ago, I
sent
got his
me
I got his Iraqi sympathizer figure
nice.
down with the rest of my collection. Because I have the other two. One of them was Chase, and I have the trio of them. Again, like that was when I was the first main event I saw was that trio there versus Hogan and Warrior at a house show, and it's just always been in my mind. In person, seeing something like that because as a kid, again, I'll go back. To you, he was dad in this, but to a kid, he's his drill sergeant, larger than life character, and at the time he was champion. So it's like he's the biggest thing in this universe.
Yeah.
And to that's like a comic book. You're the hero and this and that. To anybody, it's this big universe of wrestling. It's like this guy is the world champion. Hate him, love him. He's got something that everybody is after. And every kid's dream, if you wanted to be a wrestler, was to put that belt around your waist. You'd buy replicas and toy foam belts and pretend you're champion and go on and on. So again, it's kind of cool to see it from both perspectives. Where like at the end of the day, he comes home from work, he's like, hey dad, how you doing? How was work? Another day here, at the slaughterhouse. um,
Yeah.
you know, um, but then you got into fitness.
Sarge, I'm so sorry. I was just gonna say Sarge wasn't allowed in our house. So if he was coming home, he wasn't in his gimmick. Like he was coming home as dad and Bob. And so when he came through the door, it was Daddy. We weren't like Sarge, you know.
So there
So
was really good,
it's
like,
different.
lines kinda drawn when, "This is just a job, it's just the kayfabe's done now we're just I'm dead, I'm home."
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's kinda cool too, though, in a way, because, like, I mean, I think eventually we get kind of annoying, you're coming home in character all the time, or being this character when you know your father as somebody totally different than what you see on TV.
Yeah, it's 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 interesting. You know what I mean? It's kind of, I guess, akin to actors' children watching their parent in a movie or on a TV show, and like they're in character, and it's like people know them as that character, and so people will come up to them sometimes and be like, hey, by their character name, the actors. And so I think it's very similar. It's just that those actors are playing a lot multiple characters. Whereas while my dad did have multiple different gimmicks, Sergeant Slaughter is the one that's most known. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, no,
pretty
I get that. Like, I go to horror conventions and stuff, and you'll have an actor, but they've been in like 7 or 8 movies, so they're like, they've had 7 or 8 different characters they played, and
right.
the people they'll have them inscribe their name in 7 and 8 different characters because they've done different things. Some wrestlers do have that, they'll do like a mask gimmick or something. But I think for the
Mhm.
most part, I remember your dad mostly, except maybe early AWA, that I think he was always just pretty much Sergeant Slaughter. um,
Yeah, that's what most people remember him as, because that's the gimmick that took, you know what I mean? But he was Beautiful Bobby, he was Beautiful Bobby Remus, he was Super Destroyer Mark II, which was a masked character, masked gimmick. Um, he um then after being Sarge, he was the commissioner.
yep. No, I remember that too. And that was like the DX era and when like wrestling was really kind of wild.
Yeah.
That late 90s, early 2000s.
China. I loved China. When China came out, I was like, that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, you wanted to be the girl kicking the guy's asses. But it
Yes,
was just 10 years
exactly.
too earlier, like 15 years earlier, and it wasn't even thought of.
No,
China
no.
wasn't even conceived in like, when your dad was champion. It was crazy to think that way, but nobody was even thinking of women in that way.
Right.
And she was the only one of the only ones taken really serious at the time. Everybody else was just eye candy, and everybody wanted to see puppies. And if you think about
Yep.
that 20 years later, it's even wild to find that people are at shows chanting. 'Cause I remember going to shows, with my dad and my friends. I was a later teenager at that time, but people are literally chanting at the women talent to take their shirts off. It's like you would never even get close to doing that today. It would be so disrespectful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a totally different time. Totally different time. And thank God.
It is. I don't think it would be as enjoyable. I mean, while it served its purpose at the time, it was because it was my age era. I think was that age group that it just seemed enticing, 16, 17, 18. But also just,
Right.
in what we had for culture at the time, things like Jerry Springer and all this other just stuff, it just fit, it worked, but it would never work today. I think it would be tacky today. And I think the women's division has come too far along and it's fought too hard to break those stereotypes of what a women wrestler is
Yes.
to go back
Yes.
even close to that.
Yeah. I
Um,
agree. I agree. And there's
but
some amazing female wrestlers right now out there. There's some that they're in my very not professional, untrained opinion. There are some female wrestlers that I have seen live that definitely look much better on TV.
so you still go
They
to
have the
you
camera
go to
angles,
shows.
and
You said you go to shows regularly, like go to WWE shows and
I
other
don't
shows.
go regularly. No, I don't go regularly. I just go like if so my buddy Lacey Trailer, Big Boss Man's daughter, she lives in Atlanta, which is not far from where I live in Charlotte. And so whenever they're near us, like I'll be like, "Hey, Raw's going to be in Charlotte, or SmackDown's going to be in Charlotte, or it's going to be in Greenville." So we'll like go to Greenville and meet up and watch the show together and all of that. So that's really what I've been doing recently. But it's yeah,
Now,
and
when
it's
you go,
fun.
do
It's
people
fun to
like
go to the shows.
recognize you and they're like, "Hey, come over here," and "Hey, you," or you just kind of like incognito mode.
So if anybody recognizes me, they've not said anything. They've never said anything. I've had people later say, "Yeah, I saw you at the show." And I'm like, "Well, why didn't you say hi? Like, you could have said hi." And they're like, "Well, I didn't want to bother you." I'm like, "Well, I mean, say hey to me. That's not going to bother me. If you're like, hey, Kelly or Slaughter Daughter or whatever, I'll be like, what's up, dude? I'm not going to be like, don't talk to me.
Hey, some people will. Some people don't want to be bothered. I mean, they'll go to shows just as not a wrestler or as a person. I just want to be left alone. I could see that too. I could see people not getting involved. But
Yeah.
if they
But
know you,
there's
at least
like,
say hi,
it
though. If
depends
they
on,
know you.
well, it depends on what's going on, right? Like if I'm like with my kids and my daughter's having a temper tantrum and I'm like all frazzled as a mom, like, no, I do not want you to come up to me and be like, hey, Slaughter Daughter. I'll be like, go away.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
But any other time, sure, come say hey. I'll talk to
No,
you.
I got
If
a,
I
I
have
got a
if I have
son
the
too, and
time, I'll have a whole conversation.
I got a son too, and I can just picture that. You'd being like he's throwing the worst tantrum and just fighting. Someone just hey, coming at you with these like bullshit questions. Like, not now is definitely not the time.
N- n-
Oh
Now
boy.
is not the time.
But you did get into
It looks
fitness. You
like
didn't might have not have gone into wrestling, but you got into fitness. What kind of started that whole thing?
um COVID, actually. So I when the pandemic first happened, they said one of the high risk factors at the time was morbid obesity, and I was morbidly obese. And I had two children, and well, I had my son, and then my daughter was just a baby. And I don't even know how big I was, honestly, because I have like an old fashioned doctor scale and it only goes to 300 pounds, and I was over 300 pounds.
That's crazy.
And
I couldn't
yeah,
even like I never seen you before what you look like, but I would never have guessed that. Never even thought
people don't recognize me. But I also wear glasses now, so I think that helps too. It's a good disguise. Clark Kent was onto something with these glasses.
that.
Um, but I was like, I'll be damned if I'm gonna let some virus take me away from my kids because I sit on my butt all day long and eat too much, you know? And I was like, I'm gonna start moving. And so I literally walked 5 mailboxes because that's as far as I could go. I didn't even have sneakers. I didn't own a pair of sneakers. I had on Birkenstocks. And I walked 5 mailboxes and then I walked back. And then the next day I went 7 mailboxes and then I walked back. And then the next day I went 10 mailboxes. And so every day I would just add mailboxes. And every time I would be like, yesterday I added 3 mailboxes. So this day I'm going to add 4 mailboxes. And then I would go 4 mailboxes. And I worked up to walking a mile. And I was so excited. Like I walked a mile and I was pushing my daughter in the stroller. Then I worked up eventually to walking 6 miles with my daughter in the stroller. And I would interval do it. So I would jog for a little bit of time and then walk and then jog and then walk. And I was posting about it on my Facebook page, and a friend of mine was like, hey, don't you belong to the Y? Because a Y had just opened up in our town. And I was like, well, yeah, we joined, but we never go. Like, who goes to the gym? You just buy the membership, right?
Yeah, just
And
buy
she's
it.
like, well, why don't you come with me? Come take a class with me. And I was like, okay. And so I went and took a class with her, and then the rest is history. I fell in love with group fitness, and I'm now a group fitness instructor, and I'm the fitness coordinator at that exact YMCA. So I now work there and I love it. And I'm very into fitness, and I'm all about one, body positivity. I'm all about people being their best selves, and you start where you are and you start with what you can do. And you don't have to make all of these life changes just to get yourself started. I literally started walking mailboxes.
How many mailboxes did you do today?
Oh man, I do Spartan races now, so I'm doing like a
But it's all just started
21K.
with like the one, and it makes me like. I mean, and honestly, it gives me a little bit of thought to myself because, like, you know, I, after high school, being a big long time wrestling fan, yes, I wanted to get into wrestling. I loved it. I'm only 5'8", and I was a scrawny little kid. Killer Kowalski told me to kind of punt rocks for fighting. You might be a good manager, maybe, most likely ref. It's just not what I wanted to hear. So I went off my own way, and I ended up getting into boxing for a little bit, and I did that, and that was great exercise, total shape. And then I just let it all go to hell. And it's like now it's like I'm not morbidly obese, but if I don't start at that age level to start to kind of correct things, you get health issues later on. You'll end up with diabetes, you end up with high blood pressure, you end up with cholesterol issues. These are all preventable just through, eating somewhat decent and exercise. And just hearing someone say that, that you don't have to start with, the mile. You can start with just walking 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever you can do.
Yes.
So, because, there's people out there that, you know, I think it almost becomes nerve-wracking, at least for me, any which way, because I know I'm not in the shape to do what I used to be able to do. I know I'm not in the shape to keep up with my kid, what he could do. He's just, turbo powered and just I don't know what he runs on, but whatever it is, it's more than my caffeine can do.
Right.
Um, but you know, again, there was I don't want to just push myself, take a heart attack, but it's like you also want to be able to do something and be comfortable. And it's like
Right.
it's good to hear that people can just start wherever and kind of just jump that. This is where I'm at, and then you just keep going a little bit further. It doesn't have to be miles every day. It could be just like you said, a mailbox a day, just going a little bit further, pushing yourself a little bit more. And
Yes.
that's all it takes to kind of just show progress.
Hmm. Exactly. And you listen to your body and you do what you do what you can do, do what you can do until you can do more. And then when you can do more, then you do more. And like I took a weightlifting class where it's like a full body weightlifting class. It's 55 minutes. You hit every single muscle group. And then I was doing a cardio class. And I would kind of like go back and forth between those. And then I added a yoga class, and you start meeting people and talking to people because the same people are going to the same classes you're going to. And it becomes this whole community. The community at My Y is absolutely amazing. The people there, the members there are awesome. Um, we have a good time together, and everyone's supportive of each other. Everyone wants to see everyone succeed, and it's those little wins and the non-scale victories I feel are what people need to work on and
I
to
feel like the
focus
people
on.
get turned off, or not turned off, or maybe is the wrong word, but kind of just have this thing about the gym where they think they're going in there and everybody is like judging them or they're sizing them up, and I don't really believe that way. I think everybody that goes there and kind of focuses, whether you weigh whatever poundage. I think people aren't going to judge that you're in the gym because
No, you're in the gym.
everybody can be in health, though. It doesn't matter if you're overweight, underweight. Everybody could benefit from some kind of a workout, whether it be
Well,
weightlifting, running, cardio, whatever it is.
right. And you can be, people look at overweight people, society looks at overweight people and obese people, and they're unhealthy. They're so unhealthy. They're gross. They're disgusting, all of these things. And it's like, yeah, but you can be skinny and still be unhealthy. Like, you can be underweight and still be unhealthy. You can be at a normal weight and still be unhealthy. If
Yeah, I
you're
mean, I
sitting
could
there
just
doing
eat
nothing
junk
all
food.
day,
Yeah, you could just eat junk food all day that's very low calorie and don't. You can be skinny, but you're just getting no nutrients. It's a
right?
fine
You're
balance
not
of
working
everything.
out, you're not walking, you're not doing anything. And I'm not even saying that you have to get a gym membership and go to the gym either. You can get There's so many things you can do now. For me personally, I do need a gym membership. Like, I need to go to the gym because I need that community and I need the motivation of going to group classes and things like that. Like, that's what I need, but not everybody needs that. You know what
No,
I
I mean,
mean?
I've
There's
seen
so many
things,
different ways.
remote or on TV or even remote groups on remotely. So you'll have a group of people just tuning into a stream like this, and there'll be one
Right.
instructor, and everybody will be doing it that way. But I get you. I'd be more the person. I need to actually physically go. I'm probably not going to do it. I'll
Yeah.
do it for like 5 minutes, on the TV, and then I'll get distracted and go in the other room and go deal with something else. It will never just be what it was.
No.
You know,
We had a garage gym. Like we had gym equipment in our garage. There's still a machine down there that does it's like a three-piece machine. It does all of these things, and I mean it's an amazing piece of equipment. I have never used it. And I'm like a fitness junkie because it's in my house. Like I'm not a home
yeah.
gym for me would never work because I just won't ever go. I won't use it. I just won't. So for me, I need the gym membership. But even if you don't have the means of going to the gym and having a gym membership, you can go kayaking, you can go walk your neighborhood, you can even go to a public school and use their track and walk around their track. Just get moving. Like if you walk 5 mailboxes and then go home, that's 10 mailboxes, right? Because 5 up, 5 back. Um, you're doing a lot more than the person that sat on the couch all day and didn't do anything except go to the kitchen and the bathroom and back to their bedroom. You know what I mean? Like you're
Oh,
doing more than that
and I
person.
think when we
You're
live in
doing more than you
and
did yesterday.
unfortunately
You
we
know what
live in
I
a
mean?
society, like I could say even for myself, that a lot of the work that I do isn't, on foot running here and there, or very labor intensive. It's very, oh, I got to figure this or solve this or do this or and do computer work, which unfortunately is not good for you. You have to still take breaks, get up, move around. You get very stiff, your back starts to hurt after an hour or so. People don't realize that, even in, like, oh, it's nice to have a cozy comfy job, yes, but you still should take breaks, move around.
Yes.
Like I said, I might not be able to do what I could do, but even with my kid, I try to stay at least enough that we can play outside, throw the ball around. And I consider all that exercise. I don't not consider exercise because I'm moving. I'm moving almost more muscles than I probably do at the gym. Just because kids are
Well,
kids.
that's
They get
functional
you to do the
fitness.
kids get you to do the craziest things.
They
Um,
do, don't they?
and that is just the whole thing of it. I think, similar to you, I wanted you to, pandemic. My son was already born, but a little bit earlier than that, I wanted to just be in better shape for my son to be able to, play games with him, do things, and not be like, oh no, I can't go outside and play ball today. I'm too tired or whatever it is. And pandemic was a good time to kind of be able to, I think, sit back and reflect on people's selves. It let everybody slow down the pace of the world. 'Cause we get all busy and wrapped up in the real world that we forget about to take care of ourselves most of the time. So we don't stop and
Mhm.
think, well, maybe if I just walked, I could be better. Or if I just, did this, I could be better. But the pandemic kind of slowed everybody down. So a lot of people did actually, I think, got healthier during the pandemic, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think during the pandemic, most people were home more. They weren't moving around. Some gyms closed down. They weren't allowed to open depending on what state you were in. So there was a lot of, I think, people that couldn't do those things anymore. And so there was an increase in um, people gaining weight and things like that. And so people will say to me, they'll joke and they'll be like, "Wait a minute, during COVID, you lost weight? So you know what I mean? Like I must have gained what you lost
Yeah, I know,
during
and that's what I'm
COVID."
saying. I know people that lost too just because they just had the time to go out and walk. They didn't have to work. They had time to go out and just walk. They weren't sitting behind an office desk for 8 hours a week eating junk food. They were
Yeah,
able to walk around their neighborhood. Granted, I live in Mass. We were total lockdown, so you didn't work, you didn't go out, you didn't do much. But you could go out and do exercise. You could go out and play in the park, and you kind of strive for those things because you wanted fresh air. Damn it. um,
right.
but it was a good time, like I said, to sit back and reflect and just say, how can I change myself? How can I become a better me? It gave me the inspiration and to even start podcasting. Because I want, I used to be, like I said, a
Nice.
lifelong wrestling fan, but I got into the independent scene, and I find the independent scene to be very, very exhilarating because you can get really, really close to the ring. a lot of these guys and girls are right on the level, they're right on the level where WWE is. And, you can see the passion in their faces, you follow their careers. And I just noticed they weren't getting a lot of attention. So I wanted to bring that to the forefront of, and I started a podcast as interviewing wrestlers that were on the local scene and talking with them and
Mm.
getting them to tell their stories and so forth. And I was able to do that with the pandemic time. So I always, say it was a 50-50. It was a very bad time. There was a lot of death. There was a lot of sickness, a lot of people with paranoid anxiety, a lot of different things. But then it was also a good positive time because a lot of good changes happened and a lot of time to make changes happen.
Yes, for sure.
But but that's great though that like you said, you kind of took over the Y position. Well, let me ask you, if you weren't walking prior to that or doing any of that, would you have been more apt to just say, no, I'm not going to the gym? Or do you were you on a rush from already doing and pushing yourself in that direction that, now it was okay to go to the gym?
That's a really good question, actually. And I think if she had reached out to me and asked me if I belonged to the Y and I said yes, and she invited me, oh man, I think I probably would have been like, well, I don't have any shoes to wear. Like I need to get some shoes. And then that probably would have been my excuse to not go, was that I needed shoes. And then if I did feel like, well, maybe my pride might have gotten my way a little bit, and I might have been like, yeah, I'm gonna go. I'll go with you. Like, I'm not gonna say no because I'm the fat girl. You know what I mean? Like, I'll go, but I need to get some shoes
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because I
And
can't wear
and
Birkenstocks
I
to
always
the
feel like
Y.
I said, people that they don't won't just start at the gym. They have to be already in some sort of fighting shape to get
You
in
do
there.
not need to be in shape to go to the Y or to go to the gym at all. Everybody starts somewhere, and everybody had their, everybody has had their first time going to the gym. Everyone's had their first time lifting a dumbbell. Everyone's had their first times doing all of those things. So we all know what it's like. And to your point earlier of like nobody's watching you, like especially in group fitness, like you think everyone's watching you, they are watching themselves. We are watching ourselves. We're looking in the mirror, looking at ourselves to make sure that we have the right form, and what the instructor is telling us to do is what we're doing. No one's looking at you. And there's been so many times where I've seen bigger girls at the gym, and so bad do I want to go up to them and be like, I'm so proud of you for being here. I was you. Like, I did this. I was riding your shoes, but I don't, because I think about if someone came up to me when I was at the gym and said that to me, I don't know how I would have felt about it at the time.
Yeah, I mean, you
And I'd
never
be
know.
like,
I
are
mean, not for nothing. I mean, you don't know how to
you being
take
a
that.
jerk? Yeah, like are you being this like nice nasty to me and being like, I'm so proud of you, you know what I mean? Or like are they really genuine? Like I would have been questioning that, and so I never say anything, and I feel bad, but I will announce, like, if in my class sometimes I'll be like, hey, for those of you don't know me, my name is Kelly, and sometimes I'll give like a little
Tell their
spiel.
story, yeah. Because if I feel like
I started
if somebody came up to me and was like, "Hey, I used to be, a big person too, and I used to be out of shape," like I would just be like, "Well, who the hell is this big shot? What are they trying to sell me?"
Right. Right. And so that's why I've never said anything to anybody. So if you are that person and you feel self-conscious going to the Y, or I keep saying going to the Y, I'm sorry, going to the gym, um, if you're worried about going to the gym because what people are going to think about you, most of them are thinking, that's awesome. I'm so
But
glad
the
you're
Y
here.
membership is cheaper than a gym membership. I'll be honest with you. And they have some of them have swimming pools, which the gym don't have.
The Y?
Yeah.
Yeah, you get so much, at least the Ys in my area, you get so much for your money. Like, there's some gyms around here where I'm like, You want me to pay double my membership of the family membership that I pay at the Y. You want me to pay double that to be able to come and do your workout twice a week,
Well,
and
see, I
I
like
can
the
go to the
Y 'cause you
gym with
can
my
bring the kids. The kids have stuff to do. They can play in the basketball court. They can go swimming. They can do other things that you can't. The kid at the gym can't do nothing except get hurt.
yeah.
Honestly,
It
um,
depends on the gym because some gyms do have childcare and all of those things, but you're
we don't
paying a
got that around
premium.
here. You're lucky.
Yeah, you're paying a premium though. You know what I mean? Like you're paying a lot more than what you're paying at the Y.
Yeah,
At least around here, that's how it is.
yeah. I haven't. I mean, I might have seen a daycare like within the gym, but it's like you're right. You're paying an extra $100 for the hour. It's like at that point, I might be thinking about that home gym.
Right. That you're never going to use if you're anything like me.
Yeah, I'll do the 15 minutes and then I'll get distracted. So you took all
Right.
this wisdom, you took all this life, everything, and you put it into a book?
No,
I thought you said you
I
wrote
don't
a
have a
book,
book.
did you not?
No,
I
I
thought
have
you said
not written a
earlier
book.
that you wrote a book.
No,
Oh,
I did not say that. I would
oh.
love to write a book. I think that would be great.
I thought you said in my book. Maybe I misunderstood what the word was. I thought you said in my book.
Oh.
Okay. Well, what
Oh,
do
like that might have been like an expression. Like that's okay in my book. Like,
Oh, okay, yes. And I figured, well, maybe you wrote a biography of your life and
oh,
bought his daughter, and I was like, well,
no.
kudos to you. I was going to congratulate you. But it is a good
Oh,
idea.
thank
You should
you.
run with that someday.
I actually would love to write a book. I already have the title of my book, what I would call it, and that's like a dream of mine to be a published author. I would love that. But
Take
I'm trying
that
to get my
dream
dad to
there.
write a book.
That would be great too. But I'm just saying, I mean, just honestly, just what you talked about the gym experience. Let's take all the wrestling, throw that aside for a sec. Just that right there is very important because, like I said, the country does face an obesity crisis. We hear about it all the time. If a lot more people, I think, felt comfortable enough to work out, they felt they weren't being judged. They felt that it's okay to start small and work your way up, and that you can start here and take 2 years to get to there. It's okay. It's not about how long it's the journey. I think we would
Right.
correct a lot of these issues.
Yeah. It's so many people think, and I thought it too. Like I thought I had to be in shape to go to the gym. Well, how am I going to get in shape if I'm not going to the gym? You know what I mean? Unless I have a home gym, but then I don't need to go to the gym if I have a home gym, you
It
know?
becomes a cycle,
So
and you
it's
never
like,
go anywhere.
yes, and here's the thing, and people that are heavy and that are overweight or obese, they have a lot more pounds on them. So walking up the stairs, like I lost 127 pounds. I've actually lost 129 pounds at this point.
Wow.
But I lost 129 pounds, and I don't even know if I could walk upstairs holding 129 pounds. Like that would be a struggle for me right now to walk. You know what I'm saying? Like I couldn't
But
just
you
run
did it. You
upstairs
did it
holding
building as your
127
body weight.
pounds,
We would do that,
but
but
I was doing that. And so it's sometimes when you're heavy, lifting your arm, it's like you're holding a dumbbell because your arm is heavier than somebody else's. You know what I mean? So it takes a lot more effort to be able to go on the walk, to be able to go 5 mailboxes. That takes a lot more effort for somebody that's 100 pounds heavier. You know what I mean? And so that's why I feel so strongly about go, get moving, go do it. You know what I mean? Like you're stronger than you think you are because you're carrying this weight with you. Like you're a lot stronger than you think you are,
yeah, no, definitely. And I mean,
you
I said
know?
that's inspiring, and it honestly, even though you're going to talk about wrestling, I mean, what happens when wrestling ends? When you stop, running the circuits every week, and you're going to start putting on pounds and gain weight. You want to stay in shape. You see it happen to a lot of wrestlers. They gain weight after they retire. If I look at any of the stars that I grew up watching, they're not in the same shape today.
Well, they don't have to be.
No.
They're not on TV all the time, so they don't have to worry about what their physique looks like. So to be in that shape consistently. Like if you look at professional bodybuilders, when they go to a show and they're all cut and they've got like zero body fat on them, they don't live their lives like that.
No,
They
that's it.
cut
That's like fighting shape, like a
to
boxer
fit.
does. They cut to train to
Yes.
fight, and then they stop. But I mean, even in general, on a regular wrestler, you'd say, okay, in between wrestling, you put on 20 pounds. But some of the people, you'll see they give away the life. They put on maybe 120 pounds. It's
Yeah.
just the nature of the beast. You stop working out altogether, you'll gain weight back. You start eating like crap because after a
Oh
while, you
yeah,
get
yeah.
lazy. You don't have to do the gym. Why do it? Oh, I don't have to do it anymore. I've already had I'm in
Right.
shape. And your brain starts to trick. Well, I'm still in shape. I'm still in shape from 5 years ago from working out. Because
Right.
you're not going to gain the weight overnight. It takes time to lose that physique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
again, congratulations to everything you've accomplished. That is,
Thank
tremendous.
you.
I really have to say. And it's just about out of time, but I always like to ask, where can people find you on social? How can they follow you? How can they follow your journey? Where can they learn more about you, etc.?
So you can find me on Facebook, Slaughter Daughter Official. You can find me on X. I believe it's underscore SGT Daughter. You can find me on Instagram, Slaughter Daughter Official. It's actually on Facebook. It's just, yeah, it's Slaughter Daughter Official or Slaughter Daughter. And then on YouTube, Slaughter Daughter. So you can find me in all those places. You can also send me a friend request on Facebook to Kelly Slaughter. I get a lot of them. So if you send me a message and just be like, hey, what's up? I saw you on Versace Stoner's podcast. I'll
This way
know.
they know you're
I
not a bot
accept
and
you.
not a spam person. Yes. That's the one thing
Yes.
about social media. You never know who's real unless you talk to them first.
Right, exactly. And who's a
Well,
fan and who's going to sit there and troll too? I
exactly.
will
That's the
delete
thing.
you.
Well, hopefully they've forgiven you and your family for trading the country, and they've realized now that you're all part of the good guys. Uh,
Yes.
thank you
Good
though
old
for coming
USA.
on. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Have a great night.
Yes, you too. You're dismissed.
And thank you, everybody at home. As always, support indie wrestling. Versace Stoner out.